The following program was made possible thanks to the generous support of our Kickstarter backers.
Well, first Holmes was born, then he got fat, bald, and tired.
Sup, Holmes?
Beware your host, Jonathan Holmes.
Oh, God. Thank you, Sinistar. And Megan, thank you so much for being on the show. So nice to meet you. Already in the comments on Destructoid, people are asking questions, and I'm sure you get this all the time, if you are related to any of the other foxes. Sotana is asking if you are related to Fox McCloud, which doesn't make any sense, because that's Fox's first name, as far as I know. Samantha Fox, the singer of I Want to Have Some Fun, classic late 80s, early 90s jam. And, of course, the actress Megan Fox. I don't know if you're related to any of those other Fox people.
No, I am not. There are many. I wish I was related to Fox McCloud because he's fucking awesome and way cooler than Slippy, who's kind of a jerk. But no, if you look on IMDb, there are actually 8 of us on IMDb with the name Megan Fox. I think I'm Megan Fox 6. The really sad part is all the rest of them are all actresses. So imagine going to a casting call saying, "Oh yeah, I'm Megan Fox," and then you get there and everyone goes, At my old office, I actually worked with a Michael Jordan.
No way.
Who was actually also a really tall guy. The only difference is he was a white guy, a white pasty programmer instead of a basketball player. He was awesome, and we spent a lot of time at the old office passing around the various ad jokes of. There was the one for, I think it was actually Michael, or was it Michael Bolton or Michael Jordan? The guy, there was a credit card commercial or something for that.
Oh, yeah.
Those jokes were popular. There were like 6 of us with famous names. It was a very strange office.
I also have a famous name, though. I try not to talk about it, and I'm certainly not going to talk about it now, because this is not about me. It's about you, Megan Fox. What office was this? Where were you working with Michael Jordan?
Now, with the other Michael Jordan, this was Lego Playwell Studios, where I worked before I went into the wide world of indie. It started as NetDevil. They made a game called Jumpgate, which I'm certain some of your listeners have played. There's also the sequel to Jumpgate. There were a bunch of other games they did. Auto Assault was one of them. I started a little bit after they were trailing off of Auto Assault and started a game called Lego Universe. I was hired and eventually became their senior graphics coder. I was also my title internally was the Min-Spec Queen. So I spent a lot of time trying to get the game working on really, really awful hardware, and I mostly succeeded. But yeah, that was the previous show, working in Lego Universe. We shipped that. It was successful, just not successful enough. We actually got shuttered right after a major... Lego has this board of directors that's like 20 or 30 people. They had a full sweep. Every single one of them got replaced. And the new head of our division did the thing where the new guy wants to make himself look important, so he looks on his balance sheet and figures out the thing he can cut so it looks like he's doing a really good job. And that was us. So just politics, basically, unfortunately. Because also Lego has this internal company policy where good is not good enough. It's either great or they cut it, which, I mean, for a company that big that survived that long, it's not a horrible policy. And we were not great. We were just good. So it could have been that was why we got cut too. But there was some politics. But still, they treated us really well when we got laid off. That's actually why I was able to go indie. It was the best severance package I have ever seen and will ever see. I mean, if you ever get a chance to work for Lego, holy crap, work for Lego. They're so cool. But, yeah. So I turned that severance package into my startup, and of course I spent the first 3 months spinning in place and starting up a bunch of terrible projects, and I wasted a bunch of the severance, but still, I'm still here, so hey.
Yeah, that is the process. I'm really interested in how you got the job at Lego and how long that project went for. Yeah. It's usually the start of it, but you never know. And how long were you there for?
So, I'll answer the first question first and the second question second.
Makes sense.
The way I got the job is, and this is, okay, I'll do my spiel. Any people that are listening to the stream right now, you're probably asking yourself, some of you, how do I get a job in games? The way you get a job in games is you need to have a portfolio. It literally does not matter what your degree is. Degrees in hiring for games are like this They're used in two places. One, if you're trying to apply to a really big employer, degrees are a way of easily throwing out about 50% of your resumes. If you don't have a good degree, or your degree's in underwater basket weaving or something like that, and you're applying as a programmer job, they can throw out a lot of applications and cut chat quickly. It's not actually all that great. The theory goes you're going to throw out a lot of good employees as well, but if you're dealing with a resume pool of 40,000 or whatever it is, and you need to get down quickly, you're going to throw away some good resumes and some bad resumes. You just need to get it smaller. So that's one place where resumes matter, or degrees matter. The other place is at the very end, in the hypothetical situation where you have two equal capable employees, and the only difference is one has a degree and one doesn't. That might be the swaying thing. But those two cases aside, all that matters is experience, and the way you show experience is with portfolio work. So the way I got my job at LEGO Universe, Playwell Studios, NetDevil, Gazillion, it had a lot of names while I was there. The way I got my job, it was started at NetDevil, was by having a good portfolio. The way I got a good portfolio was, while I was still in college, I got scouted by a dude named no, not Brian Robbins, I'm sorry, Brian. Stuart Compton, there we go. Stuart Compton, he was the EverQuest 2 art lead. Well, was, and then he departed and did his own indie thing. This was back in 2003, 2005,
wow,
I think.
A while ago. Okay.
Yeah, I've been in the industry for like over a decade, or close to a decade now. He was starting a startup to do a cool MMO that was focused on growing plants, basically. And this was a full 3D MMO where you had basically a little property and you could plant things. And working with him, we built this tech that I've never seen anyone else do, and it's sad. It was amazing. We had genetic technology based on L systems that could grow full 3D procedural plants. You could sit there and watch the plants and the things sprout and grow in real time. It was amazing. And the seed DNA resulted in recognizable species for a plant, but no two plants were the same because they were procedural. And they were persistent in that you could leave the zone, come back, and it was still a persistent random plant, but in the same orientation. So it's not like they regenerated. We even had a system built where you could prune them, and then they would grow around the prune. And this isn't fake growth, where, okay, educational thing for folks listening. Everyone at first thinks that when plants grow, like imagine you have a tree, and it's a small tree, and a Y forms at the base, like at the dirt level. Everyone has this thought that as the tree grows, oh, well, you know, that'll be a good space for a tree house in 20 years when that Y is about 20 feet off the ground. No, that's not how trees grow. Trees only grow from the tips of branches. Trees do two things. They grow from the tips of branches, they split off at the tip of a branch. Well, actually, they create a budding site, and the budding site takes a few cycles, but then it starts growing. So still think of it as the tips. They do that, and they thicken. So if you have a Y at the base of a tree, it actually thickens. So anyways, the cool thing is we had this system where you could cut off a branch, and then the rest of the tree would grow around that branch. So if you imagine it's a sapling and you cut off a branch at the base, after a little while, that actually gets subsumed by the mass of the tree, and it just goes away. You also get things where even though you cut off one, if you imagine a spot where the branch goes into three little smaller prongs, you cut off the middle of the prong, and then eventually those two other ones start to kind of invade its space. Point is, this was the cool growing algorithm and tons of neat stuff, but we were pitching this game right when everyone was going, so it's a Facebook game, right? Yeah, we got killed by Farmville. So unfortunately, that startup failed. But the way I got that job was with portfolio work that I'd done previously on a game called Eidolon. And then that was on my own money. That was just a passion project. I worked with a kid, and well, at the time he was a kid, he was actually an adult. Hi, Chosker, if you're listening. His name was Oscar. I don't think I shouldn't say it anyways. But still, cool guy working in a game called Helium, made this algorithm for clouds that was extremely cool at the time, 2005. If you look at the video now, I still think it's cool because it's my kid, but no one else will think it's cool. That got me the job at Stuart's startup. Work at Stuart's startup got me the job at Lego. Because while doing the Stuart stuff, we had this cool trailer. You can look it up. If you search for Eidolon, IDYLLON, trailer, and then maybe put Shalinor after it, because I think it's under that account, you'll find this video. And that's the pitch we actually give to publishers. It's really pretty. I wrote a deferred shader. This was right after Stalker, the original Stalker, came out, and deferred shading was exploding on the scene. They did an article in, was it GPU Gems 2? I don't remember which one. There was a chapter on it. I implemented a deferred shader for this game. It was one of the first ones I'd ever done for a commercial project, which is why the game actually aged really well. Point is, that graphics work is why I was able to get a job at Lego doing the graphics programming there. And then from there, it's kind of just went. Once you've got work and experience at a large studio, like, for instance, Lego Universe, large project like Lego Universe, you kind of don't have to lean on your portfolio anymore. Then you can just say, yes, I know how to do the job, because my last job was doing this, and we're good. But previous to that, portfolio is how you get your job. So that was a kind of long-winded explanation for how I got the job. What was your other question?
That's a wonderful explanation. How long were you at Lego for?
I was at Lego for 3 years.
Wow, that's a long. And the game was running for about that long, or how long did
We released the game. No, it was about 3 years. It was a little over. Yeah, it was 3 years, pretty much on the nose. I was there for 2 to 2.5 years pre-release, and then supporting post-release for whatever proportion was remainder of my career there. I came into the project on. I think technically been going for 2 or 3 years. Practically speaking, there was about a year of work when I came in. There had been a lot of project thrash.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'd imagine for a non-game company like Lego to launch an MMO, which, from what I know, is one of the most, if not the most, complicated things to run. Not only do you have to make a game, but you have to make it work like you had to work to make it work on all different kinds of computers, and then on top of that, the whole online component, and then keeping people from not cheating, and blah, blah, blah. That must have been a huge undertaking, and they kept it running for some time. It sounds like it was more or less a success. It's just eventually, with a company like that, they're going to say, well, we could put these resources to something that maybe could blow up even bigger, and we kind of had our run. Like, if anyone plays any video game for more than a year at all, I consider that a success. But is that how it felt to you, having the game run its course in that way? Did you?
Yeah, yeah, pretty much. First of all, I have to give a shout out to NetDevil guys, Scott Brown, my programming people. They all kicked ass. So Lego was not experienced making an MMO. What they did is they came to, at the time, NetDevil and contracted us to make the Lego MMO. I was hired on for that contract. I was hired on after that contract had been running for a couple of years. So there was the experience base there that had done MMOs. At that point, they had done Jumpgate. They had done Auto Assault, which is a really challenging MMO. That was if you don't remember, Auto Assault was an MMO that was focused on cars, driving around and shooting. At the time, we even had physics. That was a really hard game to do for an MMO at the time, and they made it work. They had trouble with the marketing aspect and that thing, but the core tech was very good. And Jumpgate had some similar challenges at the time because of the scope of the game they were developing. It was relatively small, but for the team it was huge. And this was way before Eve had showed us how to shard servers off and handle large clusters, but it was still a space game, so that still happened. Point is, there was a lot of experience there, so they had the experience base making MMOs. What happened was that Lego had very limited experience making video games. You'd think they'd have that with Traveler's Tales, but Traveler's Tales actually has a pretty good firewall between their developers and Lego. Lego, I think it's because of the way the contract was structured, but basically they say, Lego, please back off. We're going to make a good game. You're going to like what comes out the other end. And then they sign off at the end, and it works. So they have a very, there are no external loops in their creative process. They're able to iterate quickly. What happened with Lego Universe was they would make a project concept, they would send it to Lego, and then they would get the feedback, and I quote, "It's not Lego enough." And we got that feedback multiple times. And it turns out that eventually it was visibility of Lego studs was one of the components of Lego Enough, which, as you might guess, for a game aimed at trying to run 3D on kids' computers with terrible GPUs, geometric studs are really hard to pull off. But then they also said that we couldn't use projection to make it appear there were studs. They had to be physical, proper studs that weren't faked. So there was a big disconnect, and that's actually where a lot of the thrash went, trying to figure out both how to get the game, quote unquote, Lego enough, and also to figure out a core concept and core gameplay loop that actually worked with what their expectations were of the game. And honestly, Lego did they really did hinder our ability to make a core game. But the collaboration between the two it made in the end, it made something very interesting, but it took a while to get there.
Sure.
And yeah, it was definitely a success. It was obviously not the success I want, but I mean, we were profitable by the end. The game was covering the expenses of the entire studio. We could have kept operating in perpetuity without a problem. But as you said, the problem is, by the time we hit that point, we had, I don't know, millions and millions of sunk costs on some balance sheet. Sunk costs, by the way, is the term for costs which have already been sunk into a product. And there's this policy, a sunk cost policy, where managers and people not experienced with business, they see that and they go, oh, well, your sunk costs are $20 million, and you've only made $2 million in profit. That means this is a horrible loss. We have to shut it down. You can't analyze things that way. You have to analyze based on the ongoing costs versus the profits. And that's what tells you if your game is profitable or not. But whenever you're making the case to a boardroom that you want to cancel something, all you have to do is show the sunk costs graph as the total costs, and it's very easy to sell your idea that you want to cut the project, which is probably what happened in our case. So, yes, it was profitable. Yes, it was a success. I'm really proud of it. Obviously, I wish it had been a better one, though at the same time, I mean, I don't really regret the way. I'm sad that the project that I put that much time into is no longer around. I'm really sad that the kids that loved it so much don't get to play it anymore. To this day, I still get tweets or emails from fans that played it and they wish they could still play it. My kids breaking down crying whenever we announced the cancellation. It was kid tears everywhere. It was really
wow.
So,
yeah.
Sad, but at the same time, I really like where I am now, and I'm pretty sure in, call it 10 years, I'm going to start running to people in the industry that actually got into games because LEGO Universe was their first game, because nothing had really targeted them in the same way before. So I'm really excited for that. And I don't know, I have a hard time regretting any of it. It was really cool.
Yeah, it sounds like an amazing experience to have, and one that taught you a lot. Did you know that much about business, the business side of things already? We've talked mostly, I think, about, well, we talked little game design, but we've talked a lot business, and it's something that you seem to be a real expert on. I've followed your Gamasutra blogs and things you talk about on Twitter. Business is something you seem to really take to.
So yes, I take to it, but no, I'm not an expert, because somewhere out there, there's someone with an actual business degree, probably going by the name of the alias Sigma X. I've had arguments with this before. So I'm interested in it. You could argue I have talent for it in some ways. My background in math, my degree is actually in mathematics. So going back to that whole degree doesn't matter. My degree is not computer science. I actually failed computer science initially. I failed it so bad I couldn't go back because my GPA was sub 1.0. At the time, I was a teenager, and I had a really good job. Okay, so this was pre-dot-com boom, or dot-com bust. This was back when internships paid really well. So I had an internship making $18 an hour, and I thought that was hot shit. And my level of success was I could go to Burger King anytime I want and have anything in the value.
Well, $18 an hour, 10. I'm guessing your age at 27.
Yeah, for 21-year-old, it was good.
Yeah.
But for this, I dropped out of university. Not only did I drop out, I never actually resigned. I just stopped showing up. It was like the stupidest. 21-year-old me was was an idiot. So point is, I failed out so bad when I went back and actually had to re-enroll in the College of Arts and Sciences instead of the College of Engineering, because given my GPA was so low, they wanted me to take 2 years of night classes before I could take real classes. It was really bad. But still, that's why my degree is in mathematics. So,
but still, you have a degree, and school just wasn't the right fit for you at that time. I imagine you had other things on your mind, like maybe even game design. Has that been something you've thought about for a while?
Yeah. So I was programming when I was 11. I started doing actual game programming. Okay, I'm sure I wrote a roulette simulator at some point, but actual game programming when I was about 14.
Wow.
I honestly kind of fell out of it whenever I was a young adult. I had a lot of life experience stuff I had to get through, which is why it took me so long to go back to school whenever I was, 23, 24, 25, somewhere in there.
Sure.
But, sorry, business. So, yeah, my degree in mathematics gives you background for it. My mind takes well to it. But I'm not really I'm not an expert. And so in indie, there's this weird thing where, yes, I'm a successful indie in that I've survived for 3 years and I'm sitting in my home office and I have cool stuff on the walls from previous successes. So that part's good. I'm a success in that terms. I'm not a success in financial terms. I'm just barely scraping by. I'm stably scraping by, but I'm not making anywhere near as much money as I would make in actual, if I was being paid by any other person. Sure. So I want to caution listeners that the business advice I will give or will talk about is from the perspective of, I think I know what I'm talking about, but until I've actually made $1 million with a successful product, which often could be, everyone cross your fingers, until that happens, this is all speculative, or based on experience from talking to people, or based on secondhand reading. So, massive grain of salt. But yes, I like business, and I'm relatively good at talking about it, and I don't know, as far as business analyst wonks go, I'm probably not bad because most of them are terrible.
Well, yeah, that's a good thing. And most of them, from what I know, don't have this kind of creative passion towards business. So when you write about business, when you've talked about it even today, you don't say, well, the way to get the money is to, but you're like, and then they do this. You can see this spark in you about how this whole process works. And knowing that you have a math background, a programming background, and an art background, it all adds up that you seem to be someone who, when you have an interesting problem to solve that has a lot of variables that you're not necessarily going to be able to control, you're interested in gaining as much control as you can and seeing how good of a positive outcome you can come out with, because it is kind of exciting if you look at it that way instead of the cold sort of, well, this is about making money, don't have fun angle on business that a lot of people who make games tell me this is how they feel about business, which is why they avoid it, and then they end up not making any money, which can be kind of sad. But your approach to business, I think, is one that a lot of people can hopefully relate to. It's just another way of solving a problem in game development.
So, yeah, how to approach that? So, yes, I don't want to say I'm excited about business, because talking about money, it always feels cheap to some degree. But as far as the risks inherent in business, they're exciting. One of the first things you have to embrace about startup life is you will fail constantly. And you can't be distracted or upset that you're going to fail. You have to be excited by failures, because every failure is a chance to learn something. It's a new experience. My approach to life in general is I like experiences. I don't go for... I think of money as a high score. I don't go for a high score. I go for experiential environment stuff. I want to try things. I want to see what happens. I want to meet people and do cool things. And for instance, yes, I'm not a financial success, but because of where I'm in business, I've gotten to go to. Okay, so if whoever planned the private Sony party at PAX 2014 is listening, you are fucking awesome. That was the best party I've ever been to. That was awesome. I have stuff like this. You go into this party and you feel like that scene in Ocean's 11 where the heroes walk into the party and there's the pumping bass music and there's the weird shit happening on stage and everyone's having expensive drinks and there's that bartender you think might be famous and you're not quite sure if you're there or if you're watching a TV show. To have those experiences. That's part of the excitement of business. I don't know. I try to have an optimistic approach, and I assume that I'm going to fail often, and I embrace that failure, and I try and learn what I can. The other thing I try and do is I try and avoid pessimistic assumptions whenever an optimistic assumption is equally likely given the data or lack thereof. I don't really follow the theory that, for instance, right now, there is a lot of discussion. If you look at this, you can talk about it right now. Right now, Steam is doing the fall sale. This is their first fall sale post-Greenlight flood. October, they also did a Halloween sale, which was terrible. And if the Valve person is listening to this, that was really terrible, guys. But you know it was terrible, and I know you're experimenting, so it's okay. This one is much better, though, so 2 thumbs up. I'm actually thumbs up in here. I don't know. Do we have a video feed?
Oh, yeah, there's tons of people watching the video. And then it goes to rerun later, too. So, yeah.
My visible thumbs up. Awesome. So anyways, even if there wasn't, I do this hand wavy thing whenever I'm talking constantly, so
it's great.
I just talk. Anyways, if you look at it right now, you will see a lot of games that you've seen previously on sale. You'll also see a lot of AAA games. And then just to make sure everyone understands, when I say AAA, I generally mean $60 big budget to $20 million plus budget games, the kind of things that EA puts out. There's also mid-tier, just to define terms. Mid-tier isn't, well, for a while, mid-tier was actually dead. But now mid-tier is occupied by the likes of Obsidian Games, who made, not Troika. No, they are Obsidian now. Crap. Drawing a blank. Black Isle.
Oh.
Basically, all of those Kickstarters on the level with Double Fine Games, where they reach between 2 million, 1 million, 5 million, and then they raise another couple of million thanks to post sales. That's kind of our new mid-tier or big indie, if you like. There's some really lines blurred there. You get things like Star Citizen, where normally you think of that as big indie. But it's a big indie game that's raised $50 million at this point. So do you really want to call that big indie, or is that mid-tier, or I don't know. But still, there's that tier, and then there's smaller games. If you look at the store right now, you'll see a ton of AAA features, and you'll see some mid-tier features, and you'll see effectively no smaller features. The one exception is Plague Evolved, which is a pretty small game that I don't know if it's... Actually, I don't know how well it's done. It's done pretty well, but it's still kind of in that smaller territory. You'll also see Papers, Please, which is a much smaller game that hasn't been featured as often, but with, giant air quotes because it won the IGF, so that's kind of not small.
And when did that come out last year? I'm actually working on our Game of the Year award stuff that I have to Google it and find out myself. Don't worry about that.
It won last year's IGF.
Right, so it's been out for a little while. Okay. And that's getting featured on the Steam sale. These old games that probably anyone who wants it already has it. I would guess.
Yes, I've heard the feedback that a lot of them use. For a lot of people, they look at this current Steam page and they see the little in-library indicator on basically everything because it's all been on sale before. So, point is, you can make from that the pessimistic assumption that all Valve cares about is money, and that right now what they're doing is they're featuring the big games because those make money. That may be true. That is one possible explanation. But another possible explanation is Valve just hasn't figured out how to surface the small games in a profitable way yet. There are too many for them to do curation. They don't want to do manual curation anymore. So they're experimenting with ways of trying to surface them. One of the ways they appear to be doing that is with flash sales. By this I mean weekly flash sales. We haven't actually seen the other kind, but I'll get to that in a second. For instance, No Man's Sky. What's the... Race the Sun.
Race the Sun. Yes, a neat sort of racing game.
Yeah, it's a procedural... It's really cool. Listeners are advised to check it out. It's got, looking at my game, you might guess that I like lo-fi visuals. I really do. And
lo-fi polygon visuals, which are hopefully going to get bigger and bigger when done well. When the edges aren't so rusty like they looked in the old PS1 games, they can be quite beautiful, I think.
Oh, totally. And Race the Sun is one case where it's beautiful. It's really simple, but it's really gorgeous. Give it a look. Point is, they were featured in it was a weekly sale or it was a weekend thing. I don't know. I don't remember all the terms, but one of those. And to my understanding, is it did really well in that. So another explanation, rather than the pessimistic, well, all they care about is big games and small games are bad. The sky's falling. Instead of that assumption, we could go with Valve was looking for other ways of servicing the smaller games. For instance, weekly sales. And that once you've proven yourself at a weekly sale, maybe that's how you qualify for the big sales, for instance. That's one possible explanation. Sure. Another possible explanation is that they're still working on the featuring metrics and that they never really did feature small games in these sales to begin with. What they did before, Christmas sales were the most common where you saw this. I think they were only Christmas sales, where you saw the vote for the next flash sale, next 8 hours, and you pick the one you like. That's really where... They Bleed Pixels, for instance, I happen to know was in one of those because that's where I got it from, because it was such a good game. And I know the developers, I really am happy it's done so well for them. It was a really small game that could have fallen under the wayside, but it did really well. Point is, that's the tier where those smaller games have always been featured, and traditionally you got one of those, and then your behavior in that was what predicated your ability to get featured in a slightly bigger sale, and so on and so forth. So the lack of smaller games in that deal matrix today doesn't necessarily mean they don't care about sales, just that these other avenues they're still working on, or maybe we'll see them come the Christmas sale, because that's really the only place they feature these to begin with, was those smaller 8-hour flash deal things.
Right.
So, yeah, I tend to take the optimistic approach. If there are equally likely outcomes that I can't reduce from, if I can't eliminate data-wise one or the other, I'm going to take the more positive one, because what good does it do me to assume that the market I'm in is dying, and that the sky is falling and Hot Tin Roof is going to fail?
Well, sure. For some people, that kind of negativity and fear then motivates them to try harder. They sleep less, they're more miserable, but they're doing, more hours of work or what have you. For me, it would just make me feel like giving up and just getting a job doing shading for the next Final Fantasy or something like that, and taking the easy road. And I have to guess that a lot of the negativity that Valve and Steam get come from the resentment that they have so much power, and were at one point using that power to curate, which is why I think, Steam didn't start off being the powerhouse that it is now. I first noticed Steam really picking up when they had this reputation for curation, and if you get a game on Steam, you can bet it's not going to be a mistake, and you can check out what your friends have played on it, so your friends are curating for you. And now they've gotten so big, it seems like you said, they just kind of have opened the floodgates on Greenlight. Just whatever exists can eventually get on there, and I'm not sure where Steam is really going. I hope I don't sound pessimistic, but it does seem like...
this is a very reasonable concern. They have definitely changed their approach, but then again, imagine you were Gabe Newell, and you were now sitting atop this empire that was capable of king-making. I mean, you read about someone, and suddenly they make $1 million, effectively. That's my thing. I don't know what it's like to run a store, but my thing would be social following people like that. You don't necessarily want that power.
Yeah.
Because you're going to make bad calls. So it's totally reasonable that they're trying to back off and say, look, we don't want to curate because we kind of just want to have a market, and we want to do... The other side of that coin is, if they're making billions and billions of dollars, I really am not sold on the idea that they couldn't possibly spend, say, $200,000 of that to hire a curation team whose job is to curate. Surely they could do that, and maybe they will someday, but they seem to have this... okay, normally I would have said a dirty word there, but I'm trying really hard to be
You can swear as much as you want, actually. It's a swearing show.
Normally they have it hard on for metrics, and that's their approach. So I think they're trying that at first. That they like the data-driven. They're programmers at heart, and programmers love data-driven solutions, and they want the perfect data-driven. But I don't think the push towards AAA is necessarily... It's not an end game. The reason it's not an end game is because, again, I'm a mathematician. I get to use the big words. They're fun. If you optimize money at the expense of all else, if you optimize profit, if you go through and say, I'm going to find the most profitable things to show, and I'm only going to show them, and by showing them I make them more profitable, therefore I show them. What you're doing is you're optimizing towards a local maxima. You're maximizing towards a local maxima. That's okay if you want that local maxima, but a store doesn't really want to do that. They want to find the absolute maximum. The way you do that is by introducing some level of noise or some level of additional information that skews your maximization outside of a local. And you can't do that. Basically, they're not stupid. They have mathematicians on their staff. They have programmers that probably have math degrees too. This is not an unknown, so they know better than that. So to assume that that's what they're doing, it's just not. It's not smart. It's not a good assumption. Now that said, figuring out what the data is to skew yourself out of that local maxima without totally fucking your profits, that's really hard. And again, I believe they're still privately owned, so I don't think they have to talk to investors in the same way. But there are obviously stakeholders within their structure that kind of don't want to lose billions of dollars. Sure. So figuring this out is really delicate, and they're not going to make big moves. They're going to make small moves, which is what you've seen so far in the store. The first sale this year, the Halloween sale, you saw, I'm sorry, whoever set that up, I'm going to keep bitching about this because holy crap, that was bad. You saw just a list. They just had a list of sales, and it wasn't even a randomized list. And the order it was in appeared to be random, but not. It was really strange. Some of us actually think it was based on the order you submitted for the sale, which would be the laziest goddamn thing I've ever seen. But still, That was their first attempt at a sale that has no curation, basically. That sale was open to anyone. You could just say, hey, I want to be in the sale, and that's how you got in. Their next sale clearly has some degree of filtering applied to it. You can still be part of the sale, and if you go down to the, I think it says, there are over 1,000 video games currently on sale. There's a button down there you can push to see all of them. That list is still there, but now there's a layer of metrics and filtering over that that's trying to create the same deal grid, but without a kingmaker sitting there going, I shall make this indie successful, because that's really creepy power, and having that kind of power isolated to a single store is frankly dangerous for the market on a whole. It's good for, like, me. Mike Bithell has tweeted a lot about how he doesn't think Thomas Was Alone could find success in today's market because of how it's a quirky game. And for a quirky game to do that, you kind of need a kingmaker saying, ha, I think that's funny, that's good, we're going to make that $1 billion. I'm actually kind of worried Hot Tin Roof is in the same scenario. I mean, I have a game about talking detective cats. It's a little weird. But still, they've added a layer that's trying to add some layer of curation, and they're trying to figure out algorithms that do this. And you're starting to see those algorithms promote some, at least not AAA games. They're kind of middle tier. There's even some on the lower end of that middle tier that maybe are successful already, but not as successful as they could be, and the bar is dropping. I guess in the next sale, the Christmas sale, you're going to see either on the front page an integration of their taste system. There's probably a better filtering taste. Basically, their thingy where you can say recommendation system.
Yeah.
Integration of the recommendation system so that the front page is in some way customized to you from the set of games that are on sale. Because right now, if you click on the See All Recommendations button, you actually get a really nice deal grid that shows games that if you don't buy everything, it's actually pretty smart about what it shows you. I get a really nice deal grid. It's pretty cool. I think it shows me Hatful Boyfriend, which is nice. It's actually good. Shows me some really weird ones. That's cool. They've got a good system there. You might see them trying to surface that. You're also probably going to see an integration of the flash sales, probably flash sale voting as well, because that's been popular every single time, which is an avenue for them to get in even smaller games. And if you're talking about flash sales, you can start to drop the sales requirement, and you can start to use, say, percentage of thumbs up votes, for instance, as the primary factor. You can start to use the percentage of people, curators. You can even have a widget that says, today's voting choice was brought to you by PewDiePie or Total Biscuit or Markiplier. Hopefully Markiplier, because I think he's better. Sorry, Total Biscuit and PewDiePie. You're both cool, but you guys tend to cover the big games and try and focus on how we can get the smaller games. And
sure.
Markiplier does better. Anyways, point is you can do that, and you can start filtering and curation that way. They keep adding layers and layers and layers. So I really do think they're trying to work in that direction. It's just they have to do it slowly because imagine this company teetering across this $1 billion tall tower, and they're not going to teeter it because that's dangerous, and then the company dies and everyone gets sad.
Yeah. What if they wanted to hire you to passionately talk about these strategies and ideas and implement them? Would that be fun?
They are welcome to contact me. So I'm actually planning on moving to Seattle next year. Probably not early next year. We were originally planning on moving out there in like February or something, but Sarah, my partner, she graduates this winter, or actually 3 weeks, really cool, as a mechanical engineer, and we're kind of in a transitionary phase after that where her finances are kind of dead because she just got out of school, obviously. So we want to work here for a while and let her kind of build up a nesting before we move. So we're going to try to find a 6-month contract for her and move back next summer, basically. Point is, I'm moving to Seattle next year, so maybe I want to work for Valve, but we're planning on moving to, okay, if I say Poulsbo, do you know what I'm talking about?
No, unfortunately. I'm sort of Seattle dumb. I've been there like 3 times, I think.
Okay, so you have downtown center, I'm gesturing here, and then you have, this is going to be mirrored, sorry. To the east of Seattle, you have the, maybe it won't be mirrored. Oh, Google Chat's actually mirrors. This actually works. Okay, so Seattle, you have downtown. East side is where Valve is and where Microsoft is, and this whole nexus is basically shit traffic central, and you don't want to drive here because there's nothing here other than those employers. Then further east is Duval, downtown, West of Duval, by the way, there's water right here. This is the sound. This is the inlet. This is Puget Sound. No, that's not right. Do I have that right?
I think so.
I grew up in Alaska, and a lot of the sounds, a lot of the names are similar, and I want to say it's Puget Sound. I'm not sure. Point is, there's the sound. There's the inlet where ferries run across, and then over here is the Kitsap Peninsula. And the Kitsap Peninsula starts up here, and then it goes all the way down here, and then down here there is the Tacoma Narrows Bridge, and then there's Tacoma, and then if you want to take the land route, you go here, and it's a really fucking long commute anywhere. However, ferries from Kitsap Peninsula across. It's this gorgeous, like from Poulsbo, which is a peninsula like right here. From Poulsbo to downtown, it's about an hour commute by ferry. The ferry is gorgeous. You don't have to sit in rush hour traffic. So, yeah, the commute might take 15 minutes longer because of loading and unloading time, and maybe sometimes you're late because the ferry. I will take all of that more than fucking I-5 traffic all the way around, or driving all the way over from Duval in some terrible traffic. So much better. But the problem is, here is Poulsbo, here is where Valve is. Commuting there, it would be a fucking nightmare. So yes, Valve's welcome to contact me. They want to do remote work.
If they gave you that Valve money, then you could just move in wherever you want. You could just move in next to Valve, probably.
But I don't want to move in next to Valve. It's a terrible place. Poulsbo is a cool small town community, and there's great hiking over here, and it's near the Mount Olympus?
Yeah, Olympia, I think so.
Yeah, and there's the rainforest over here. It's a gorgeous terrain. There's even, believe it or not, on the northern end of the Kitsap Peninsula, there's actually surfing. It's wetsuit surfing, but I like wetsuit surfing because I have body issues like everyone, and wetsuits make you look sexy.
That's pretty awesome. I wonder about Nintendo's over there too. I don't think they have replaced my Dan Edelman, the guy who's been on this show. Wonderful man.
Yes. Oh man, when I've worked with Dan before, Dan, he was my favorite guy to work with at Nintendo, and I'm really sad he's not there. But I'm so glad he's getting out doing cool stuff now. So I have a hard time feeling bad.
Yeah, he's happy. He's working on Axiom Verge and with Tom Happ, who's also been on this show. They're doing some excellent work over there. And Damon Baker, I believe, at Nintendo, I talked about him last week when we had 2DX on. He is at Nintendo integrating with indies, but you know indie game developers, you know business, you know things, you're excited about things in video games and business.
Yes.
You'd be a cool Dan Edelman, I think.
Potentially. Actually, a couple of years ago, or was it last year? I think it was. I have a friend that actually works in Tony. I don't want to give last names, but hi, Tony, if you're listening. Tony works for Amazon. He's one of the higher-ups in the marketing department. He kind of wanted me to apply for a marketing gig over there.
Huh?
I could have been part of the Amazon work. And actually, Amazon has a really nice campus downtown in Seattle. And, okay, downtown Seattle, we're going to scale it up. Downtown Seattle, here's the East Side Bridges, here's the inlet. The ferry terminal is here. Amazon's like right here. It's like you get to the ferry terminal and you can take a bus right over. It's a really nice commute. I could actually work at Amazon happily. But I don't want to give up the indie thing until I've seen how Hot Tin Roof does. And if Hot Tin Roof does well, of course I'd rather keep my own business going than go to work for the man again.
Sure.
But there are some great options in the area. And so we're talking about marketing, and I'm good at business, and I'm also not bad at community. I mean, I've got a big Twitter following at that point, and that's all awesome. But so one of the weird things about being a woman in tech is you can't just be a programmer. You are a female programmer that is a woman and has boobs and is a programmer that is a woman. You can't just be a programmer. And because of that, you feel compelled. Well, actually, there are some systemic reasons why. Based on that, the pulpit of issues on which you can speak, you will get signal boosted if you talk about women in tech issues. You won't get signal boosted if you talk about the plight of pugs in the downtown area.
Or just, you're really keen, from what I've followed on Twitter, graphs, charts, math, just thinking about like the numbers, excited about numbers. If you talk about numbers, sadly, Twitter, not a place where a lot of people are excited about retweeting something about numbers. Talk about social issues, talk about being a woman, talk about being in games. You do have the potential to get a larger signal boost, is what I'm gathering. What you're saying.
Yeah, totally. And I don't want it to, again, listeners, I'm not saying that I play to this audience because, I'm being pandering and to twiddle my non-existent mustache. But there's this weird effect where you tend to get signal boosted on those things and not on others. So it's kind of impossible to be a woman in tech without talking about women in tech. Because of that, I have to bring out the fact that, yes, I could move into marketing, but if I was to count out the number of women who entered as programmers and then eventually became community representatives, marketers, producers, etc., it's a really common career path. There's a lot of reasons for this. Most of them involve work-life balance issues. Those roles tend to be better for work-life balance, which means it's easier to raise a family, for instance. It's easier to not work horrible hours. There are a lot of good reasons for going in that direction. But I feel it's important that women actually stay in coding as well. So, yes, I could move into marketing, but honestly, I want to stay a programmer just because at this point, there are so few of us in this space that me leaving as a programmer on the Gama Sutra yearly salary surveys, I would probably count for half a percentage point of the women in tech as programmers. And I don't want to do, I think it's really important that we provide role models that aren't artists, that aren't, right now the gender balance is really skewed in games. A lot of women gravitate to art, and the reason a lot of women gravitate to art is because traditionally STEM programs have not done well at attracting young women. So what happens is you get to our age, and then women have gone up a fine arts background, but they also like games, and so they jump across into games as an artist. Whereas STEM has been really bad traditionally, getting women up through our course to programmers. So because of that, you get this weird gender skew where most women in games are in art or are in production or are whatever, and a lot of us in code then leave code either because of work-life balance issues or often because of harassment faced by male programmers at some frankly awful working environments for programming. Yeah. If there aren't some of us in this space, and it's really weird to watch a video of myself being mirrored. Now that I notice the camera.
So
I think it's important that some of us actually stay in this space. So yes, I could make the jump across, but I kind of don't want to.
And as a business owner, as an indie developer, you're doing it all. You are, because you work with a few other people, from what I've gathered, but you're doing a lot of the heavy lifting.
Oh, so again, this is.
Oh, sure.
Sorry, throat thing. But this is the part of the talk where I make the point that no, I do not work alone. Hot Tin Roof is not my own work. I didn't even do the art in Hot Tin Roof. Jones on Fire, I did do the art, which is why it looks like programmer art, and I just cheated because programmers can do voxel art because it's more procedural in nature. There are two art skills. There's actual art skill and there is design skill. I have good layout sense and I can do design work in artistic sense, which means you have an innate sense for how things are aligned on a page. You know the golden rule. Your brain says this is wrong. That's design sense. I have that. So if you have that, you can actually do credible voxel art so long as it's low res, because there are fewer moving pieces to fuck up. It's like doing pixel art where there's only 10 pixels. So long as you have a design sense to know what's aesthetically pleasing, you can assemble those without your stupid fingers totally fucking up the piece of art. Any other kind of art, there's like a billion pixels and your stupid fingers do stupid things and the art's terrible. You need an actual artist. So again, Jones and Fire did the actual art. Here, no, the art's not mine. The art is being done by Ellery Gillis, McGinnis Gillis. I'm sorry, man. I always get your last name wrong. It's a hyphenated name, and they're both Gillis, McGinnis, and Ellery and Will Lieberman. They were both people I worked on with Lego. They are my 3D artists. Fulmer Kelly, who goes by, oh man, I'm sorry. What is your Twitter account? Pretty sure it's just do @Fulmer Kelly, and it'll come up because there's no one else named Fulmer Kelly. Seriously, he's part of Sets and Settings. Though I don't know how much they actually do at this point. I think they're still at least somewhat together. Or maybe Sets and Settings just Fulmer at this point. But he's my concept artist, 2D artist. Nathan Madsen, he is Madsen Studios, Twitter, by the way. He's my audio guy. Michael Nielsen, which is Nosteme, I believe, Nosteme. I want to say Nostreme. One of those. He's my actually he started as my Audiga. He was originally just a chiptunes composer we had, but he was interested in design, and he actually has some engineering background, so he's slowly transitioned into being the actual co-designer. He's my level designer now. He's done all the level design work. At this point, I sit back and I do coding and I do dialogue, and then I just sign in and I check out his levels and I smile and they're awesome. He's really great at what he does. He is my level designer, and we're drawing a blank. Blake Parsons is my animator.
Oh.
His work is really limited. He's just because if you've seen our art, it's very boxy and simple, which means we use the same animation set for basically everything. So Blake's contribution has been limited to just that animation set and a couple of other minor things. But still, Blake is an important part of the team. He's the animator. So yes, I am not the only one doing the work. This is a team effort. But yes,
not Jones on Fire. Hot Tin Roof, the cat that wore a fedora.
The cat that wore the fedora.
I love the cat that wore a fedora. I love the poetry of it.
Or the fedora.
The fedora. My mistake.
That matters is because in the world of Tin Roof, it's the Tin Roof slums, by the way. Hot Tin Roof is obviously a reference to the Tennessee Williams play, etc.
Sure.
Cat on Hot Tin Roof. There is actually a reference to Brick in there, and there are a lot of references that no one will pick up unless you actually know what the hell the play is and know who Tennessee Williams is. But I mean, that's fine. So my degree is in mathematics, but my mom was a writer, and my grandma was a contract writer. So growing up, I was really steeped in the writing culture. My mom really encouraged me to write, to do creative writing. A lot of my background is in creative writing. I actually have a lot of poetry. I've been trying to get a little bit published, really. I've got a set about 4 that are very publishable, and that they're just. So I don't know if you've ever done trying to get work submitted for publishing. It's kind of thankless because you're not going to get paid for it. You get like $25 for a submission, and it's really hard to find the right journal. But you just submit, and you eventually get it. Eventually, I'll be a published poet. I've also got creative writing experience. Yada yada. So oh man, I lost my train of thought. What the hell?
Oh, that's okay. We were talking about Hot Tin Roof, and in general, we've talked for, we're almost an hour in, and gosh darn it, I didn't do a very good job as a host because I did not direct us towards explaining what your cool video game is about that you're working on. Hot Tin Roof.
Tin Roof, the reason the fedora part matters, or the fedora, is because in the world of Tin Roof, the police force either doesn't exist or kind of exists but is effectively corrupt. The police aren't really there. What are there is private investigators. Private investigators don't have badges, they have hats. Specifically, they wear brown fedoras. So the hat, the fedora, is a reference to Frankie, your sidekick, who is the first cat to wear the fedora, which is to say, she is the first cat who's been promoted to private investigator. In this world, there's actually racial tensions between non-Bakshans and Bakshans. Bakshans don't believe cats can be trustworthy. They are associated with the criminal class. So
and Bakshans are like people.
People,
right.
Yeah. And because of that, her being a PI to wear the fedora is actually significant. But yeah, I guess, do you want me to do the brief of what the game actually is?
Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, if anyone was confused what the hell we were talking about this entire time, Hot Tin Roof is a game where it's kind of Metroid meets L.A. Noire with an Inspector Gadget gun. The revolver, the Inspector Gadget gun, is how we do your special abilities. Instead of getting screw jump and spider ball and so on and so forth, you actually get different ammo types cartridges for your revolver, which is a wobbly MK 2/3. Any firearm nuts will know the joke. There are 4 cylinders. Ha ha! Anyways, you get things like grapple rounds, thud rounds for breaking things. You get gum rounds that actually shoot gum wads, technically gum balls, or not gum balls, gum drops. There's the word.
Gum drops.
But you don't actually get anything that can kill anyone. It is impossible to kill anyone with the gun in the game. What we're trying to do was create a game that has a gun center point. Really, if I say kinesthetic, does everyone know what I mean? Yeah, kinesthetic.
I think so.
Focusing on the making it feel physical, making it feel interactive, making it feel like an actual object. That is how we try to model Revolver, to get people attached to the idea of the gun, because side-scrolling, there's this weird thing where if you give players a gamepad with 2 sticks and it's a side-scroller, you really want to use the right stick to aim and shoot. It's a very satisfying interaction, and it's playing on players' training over the years, basically. We want to tap into that, but without the typical, and now I'm going to go kill 1,000 people. Because frankly, in noir, there's a lot of brandishing. There's a lot of using the gun. The gun is very important as a plot piece. Shooting people, killing people, almost never happens. Watch any noir movie you like. There will be almost no people dying until the very end. Typically speaking, the only people that die are a couple of bad guys, maybe one good guy. Also, typically in noir movies, your focal character is the bad guy. There will be a lot of shootouts involving him, but he himself will not die until the climactic scene. And this is because in those movies, they use revolvers. First of all, revolvers have, they assign more importance per bullet shot because of the nature of the gun. You can't just sit there, unless it's a Tommy gun, Thompson. That's the exception. But even there, you don't think of, the shots are still important. Very rarely does someone stand up and just, mow down 20 guys. They're shooting bursts, and people are ducking behind cover, and there's a lot of explosions and a lot of sparks flying up, but very few people die. A lot of importance is assigned to character death. So if we had created a game where, like Metroid, and so imagine Metroid, but instead of the crawler things, we had Baksh and Mooks. This was actually the original design. We found that it wasn't going to work. If we created a game where you just ran around killing people, it totally spoils the noir field. Suddenly you feel like a psychopath, and it just does not work. So what we had to do was create a satisfying gameplay loop that taps into the character shooting and interacting with the game in a single core way, which shooting happens to be, but while still keeping death, character death, important. In our game, at this point, originally there was going to be a climactic scene in which someone died. There isn't. At this point, no one dies in the story, which is important. In the process of doing this because of noir reasons, it became a personal thing. I want to make a game about a gun that doesn't let you kill anyone, specifically to push back against the typical, it's very popular in conservative media, that video games are murder simulators, and that, all these people kill. No, video games are not that. Video games are experiences. Video games are exploratory stories. They're so much more than that. So this became kind of that, fuck y'all. No, this isn't about killing people. You're wrong. Shut up.
Yeah, it's about teaming up with a cat who's been discriminated against racially for being a cat, and using a gun to explore, discover, traverse new areas, and find out what your potential is. That's how it sounds.
Oh yeah, and we've also included, for instance, all of the characters in Hot Tin Roof are black. This was an intentional choice. This is not because... It's not so much a statement as a, why are all heroes bald white male protagonists? So we actually started by inverting that. We're not going to make that kind of game. We're going to make exactly the opposite of that game because we have fully explored the plight of the bald white male protagonist. This is not a narrative expanse that can be deeply plumbed. We're done. We've even explored not bald white male protagonists. Nathan Drake, the psychopath. I like Nathan Drake, but we're done with this space.
Yeah.
But I also wanted to work in racial sentiment because in the 20s and 30s there was a lot of racial tension, obviously, and it's an important component of noir. But I wanted to do it in a way that wasn't offensive, basically. You see this a lot in cartoons, actually. They approach racism usually they use species difference as a different approach, and it's not to imply that one species is better than the other. They just use that as a stand-in for race so that kids and especially conservatives, people that trend toward conservative as opposed to liberal thought, if you give them an actual racial conundrum, they're going to get angry because it kind of taps into a lot of that belief they have about racism or not racism or whatever, and it's a minefield. It's very hard to make a game that appeals to both sides of the spectrum if you're dealing with racism as such. But if you take a step back and you present the same ideas as a difference between cats and dogs, for instance,
sure,
it makes it more relatable. Looney Tunes, for instance, does this all the time. So because the game had that comedic bent anyways, which we needed to give it for the no-gun thing to make sense, we wanted to experiment with that a little bit more. For instance, like I said, cats are prone to being assumed as criminals. There is what is it? Our whiskered mothers of the holy womb. I'm going to get this wrong.
Whiskered mothers? Of the holy womb?
It's basically a church group. The church group discriminates against non-mammals. they don't believe pigeons have souls. They believe pigeons are devils.
Uh-huh.
So that is another aspect. I am critical of religion in many ways. I'm critical of religion, not spirituality.
Right.
But, I wanted to bring in elements of that without actually pissing off Christians, for instance. I have a lot of Christian friends. I don't want to piss them off. But I want to explore that narrative space. So again, to do that, I created a kind of stand-in character. In this case, they don't like pigeons, and because of that, pigeons are even lower than cats. And there's a lot of social hierarchies that fall out of all of this. But all of these things are ways of exploring different narrative expanses that you can't normally touch, that I wanted to try and get into. Also, the main character is a lesbian. That's more because that's what I am, and you tend to write what you know.
Sure.
I wanted to have a credible relationship in the game that wasn't, okay, sorry BioWare, but the creepy mannequin sex that's at the end of most of your games, fucking creepy, man. Sorry.
They're doing what they can with the tech they got. I personally think they should wait for later until the tech is there.
I really wish they would just do like a kiss and then fade to black.
Oh, that would be classy. Yeah.
A little weird. I think they actually did better in Dragon. I hear they did better in Dragon Age Inquisition. Has a trans character too, which is really cool.
Yeah.
But still, I want to create a credible relationship without doing that kind of doll pantomime thing and without artificiality. And I didn't trust myself to do that without a relationship that I actually understood. There is a relationship in the game, though ironically, it doesn't really go anywhere. Emma Jones, the hero Jones, she's a complete coward. She is terrible at interpersonal relationships. She buries herself in her work because it's easier. So there's actually a lot of, I don't want to say tension, but it doesn't go anywhere near as far as you might expect. And that was also an intentional choice because I didn't want to do the mannequin sex. And to do that, you need a logical reason why the relationship stops. So more satisfying, but without boxes bouncing on top of each other, which is what it would have been otherwise.
It's got to be, yeah, I'm imagining being you and the challenges of wanting to say something. You have an opportunity to make a game that has, people are aware of it. There's eyes on it. So you don't want to squander this opportunity to say something, but at the same time, you know the limits of the tech, the money you have. You can't make the next Star Wars right now. You've got voxels, and you're going to make a 2D action platformer. And it sounds to me, as someone who's going to receive your game, I'm glad that it doesn't feel forced upon me, like you are saying, you have to think about social issues with my game. You're putting the dynamics and the fun first, and then if you decide to look a little further, it's a cue to me. Well, everybody's black. Huh. Well, maybe there's some thought about race in this. Maybe there isn't. I don't know. But at least it cues to me that maybe I should be thinking about that.
Exactly. Another example of that is one of the primary themes of the game is actually gender. But the only reason you would know this is some of the backers actually get our design document. It actually says at the top, primary theme, gender, primary motif, white lies, deception. But you wouldn't actually know that from the game. We've intentionally made gender subtle. Boxtions are square by nature. The only difference between a female boxtion and a male boxtion is a female boxtion has a butt. They have if you imagine a cube, it's kind of a cube with a butt bump and a boob bump. That's the only difference. About 60% of our players never even realize they're playing a female character. It just never comes up. We don't make a point of it. We use female gender pronouns in the dialogue, obviously, but we at no point do we hammer you over the head with, you're a female and this matters. There will probably be players that, because because we have more obviously sexualized the romantic interest in the game, and it's really minor stuff. We're talking blush on the cheeks. That's pretty much it. Little purple circles, really.
Right, like Miss Pac-Man had.
Exactly. It makes it a little bit more obvious. We've made her gender slightly more obvious. So we'll probably have a significant portion of the players that think they are a dude romancing a woman. I'm positive we will get reviews that totally don't understand. And I'm okay with this. I don't even care if players think this and report this. One of the primary aspects of a creative piece is you have to accept that once it enters the public sphere, it doesn't mean what you think it means. It means what everyone else thinks it means. themes.
Mhm.
So if a large portion of the players don't get the themes I had in mind, that's totally fine. We've made the game playable just as a game. It's a fun side-scroller. It has good Metroidvania gameplay loop. It has the cool 2D, 3D thing where it's a 2D side-scrolling world and a 3D actual world with the camera playing. If anyone's not understanding this, just watch the trailer or actually go to the website hottinroofgame.com. Watch the IGF gameplay footage. You'll see what I mean very quickly. It's the camera skews. Yeah, we got this cool tech. It's a very satisfying game just as a side-scroller. And that's fine. If that's the level you want to embrace it, that's cool. If you want to think it's a straight relationship and that's as far as you read into the dialogue, cool. I'm kind of taking the Dark Souls approach in that the dialogue, the design doc, is actually 40 pages long. And that's not don't think of that as a design Bible. I don't believe in design Bibles. What I do is whenever I clarify an aspect of the plot, I write it down. Or whenever I clarify an aspect of the character, I write it down. The only reason for this is so that the next time I write that character or write on a part of the plot, I don't get inconsistencies. Very rarely do I actually go through the design doc and go, look at this wonderful thing. Everything must match perfectly. There's probably bits that don't even match at this point. But still, yeah.
40 pages of just making sure that this world stays consistent. It sounds like there's probably a lot to this world. How close is the game to being done at this point?
Pretty close. The game released in February, so you're looking at a handful of months. Right now, I'm doing all of the plot beats have been known for since the beginning. Obviously, kind of a start there. What I did most recently was I made sure that I had the major plot beats done, but then between the plot beats was like the narrative equivalent of a question mark. A thing happens, and then you're here. A thing happens. Thing. So I've been writing the dialogue that actually strings together why you go from point A to point B, what the characters actually say to get you there, that kind of thing. I've got the plot beats connected, and now I'm actually writing all of the dialogue. And I write the dialogue in a actual document rather than in the game because any writers watching this, you'll know it's really hard to get in the writing mood unless you're in the right environment. I actually write best whenever I have physical media in front of me, like an actual pen and pencil and pen and paper. I hate pencils. But transcribing that is really freaking obnoxious. So I've tried to get myself in a space where I can at least use digital media. But still, I need to write separately and then I copy it across. I'm now in the process where I'm writing all the dialogue, which is going pretty fast. Really, it shouldn't take much more than I'm kind of hoping I'll actually have it done and implemented before I leave on a Christmas vacation to my grandma's. I might not. I might be writing a bunch of dialogue while I'm there on the laptop. We'll see. But still, I'm really close. Then, once that all gets implemented into the game, almost all of the environments are done. I want to say Michael's actually almost done or done with High Table, which is the final dungeon. The structure's kind of Zelda hub and spoke. We think of them as dungeons, even though they're not literal dungeons. They're similar experiences. They're defined loops and offshoots, and there are 3 of them in total. He's finishing the 3rd and final one. After he finishes that, he goes on to the area in which you encounter the final boss. There are no boss fights in the game. It's just reusing a lot of puzzle pieces that you had seen in previous areas used in new ways. Like, for instance, in High Table, there are motors. Motors can be used to keep things open or keep things closed. You shoot the motor to break it, and then it effectively turns off the switch, and it reverses the state of whatever it was holding open or closed. There are also gummy protrusions from the wall for story reasons, which I'm not going to spoil, that happen to explode if you ignite them. Typically speaking, you would never see both of these elements together. Actually, those 2 you will. But there are elements that you would not normally see together in the gameplay flow, which, because it's the final encounter, we can start mixing them in new ways and figuring out creative ways of using all of this stuff. So it's that standard, how Metroidvanias do encounters. The actual boss fights were never all that interesting. It was more about how the abilities you get gauge your content and how it controls player flow.
Sure. It sounds a little like, I don't know if you ever played Teslagrad from Rain Games. It's a game...
I have not, but it's been on my wish list for a while. Is it good? Because it looks good.
It is. I am quite fond of it. It is mostly pacifist. It sounds like there's quite a few parallels here, which is interesting. It's people who grew up on Metroid, Castlevania, but also want to send a message with their games. So it's about a game and a young boy, I think in World War I, World War II, and he discovers all of this cool magnetic tech in a castle as he's being chased down by the army. He doesn't want to kill anybody. He's just a kid. But then he bumps into bosses, and he has to solve the puzzle of the boss with the tech that he's discovered, which sounds a little similar. And all the bosses are mechanical. He's just like fighting robots, basically.
Exactly. Another game that's kind of like that is Vessel. In Vessel, you really can't kill anything. You don't get killing powers. So, like, the first boss encounter is this huge, probably too huge room where you have to run around and hit switches and use your goo people to do different things. It's very complicated. Honestly, it was a little overwrought, and it was really hard to figure out which was. Well, they also did that. We have all pretty much avoided boss encounters, period. Our boss, because our game is basically half platformer, half adventure game, our bosses are actually dialogue interactions because we use those plot beats to tell story, to give you more noir feel, to explain the fact that you are a detective, a private investigator, and you would need to take the dude down, and yada, 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 yada.
Huh, interesting. So we had Ron Gilbert on the show not that long ago, and I'll read that question aloud in a second.
Oh, we have a question.
Oh, yeah. I'll read it, I promise. Just a second.
Okay.
I wouldn't forget him. Ron Gilbert created the fighting through dialogue technique seen in Monkey Island.
Yes.
Video game. He was on the show. I still can't believe he was on the show. So was it similar to that, where you run into a climactic interaction, but it's then a dialogue-based interaction, a dialogue-based fight?
So the difference is in that dialogue, you would run around and you would unlock different
Quits, insults, things like that.
It was basically just unlock enough of them and then you can get through. Our version of that is you run around and you find clues.
Mm-hmm.
And you use clues to get through encounters. But because they are clues and because of how they're used, they don't work well for climactic events, but they work for set events. So we have a lot of gates in the game. At this point, all of the gates can actually run past if you use your abilities the right way. I didn't want to fuck with the Metroidvania gameplay for core people that just want to do the Metroidvania thing. But still, there are gates in the game where you have to get a warrant before you can do something, before you can explore a certain area, before you can go accuse a dude baselessly, before you can whatever. Those warrants are achieved through I'm going to fuck this up.
That's okay.
Means, motive, and opportunity. That's the standard of what you need to basically accuse someone. If the person has means, motive, and opportunity, that's the basis. And because of that, you actually need to find clues that are means, motive, and opportunity. And because I've broken them out that way, typically speaking, there are multiple clues you can find that indicate means, multiple clues that indicate opportunity, and lots of multiple clues that indicate means.
Huh. Yeah. This it sounds sad, but excited at the same time, which is interesting. Sag-sided, I guess. That this is the first time I've seen this, taking the thinking like a detective that you need to apply to a 2D exploration game, a Metroidvania game. How am I going to find this to solve this problem that I found over here? You have to look at the world in terms of what's hiding in here and what can I use in here to solve this problem. That's what detectives do. That's what you're going to be doing in your game, it sounds like.
Kind of. I don't want to oversell it. I mean, that is what the game is. But because you're going around finding clues that we've set in place, practically speaking, I mean, if you really boil the game down to what you're doing is you're finding a red key, a blue key, and a green key. And there happen to be multiple instances of the red key, of the blue key, and the green key spread through the world. That is mechanically what this is. But the thieving and the way you interact with the world and the fact that you have to explore around and find these keys in, places where clues make sense to find.
Sure.
It is a lot of detective element. There are also pieces where that one ammo type in the game allows you to reveal hidden things. Another ammo type allows you to reveal hidden things. One ammo type shows you where hidden things are if they're invisible. The other, another ammo type actually shows or reveals hidden things once you know where they are. You can actually run around just shooting the revealer, and if you randomly hit stuff that reveal, but we wanted to give you some way of actually thinking about it.
Sure.
So the clues aren't just sitting out in plain sight. You have to think about where they are. You have to actually explore the area. But the the core gameplay loop still feels more like exploration as opposed to literal puzzle solving.
Mm-hmm.
Another choice because the basic gameplay, the basic presentation is that of a Metroidvania.
Right.
We didn't want to have a Metroidvania that we then blocked the player with, and here is the Towers of Hanoi puzzle, and here is that sliding block puzzle that's in every goddamn puzzle game, and now you have to do it here too. That kind of thing doesn't have any place in a game that's focused on platforming and exploration.
Mm.
So we come up with a gameplay type that was detectiving, that involved the detectiving angle, but still played to the strengths of exploration and, interaction. So, yes and no. The detective element is there, and it's very strong, and it's a critical part of the game, but you're not going to come up against a dialogue puzzle that requires you to find the murderer based on this contextual clues.
Right.
There are those puzzles that's in everything, and there was even in Knights of the Old Republic, that fucking find the murderer puzzle was in there. It's always terrible.
Right, so it's themed around detective work, but the actual mechanics, the actual practical application of what you're doing is finding stuff and then bringing it to a place. Sounds good.
Which is, and it's fun and it's exploratory, but it's good, just not... We're trying to walk that line between adventure game and adventure game and platformer, where we have to skew in a direction. We always skew towards the platforming and exploration, as opposed to, here is a puzzle, please solve it.
Sure.
It's always going to be, there are puzzles, but puzzles are almost always solved with the gun and certain ammo types. Because it's a revolver, we actually have it set up so that you can quick fire certain combos. You actually pull the revolver and you're loading different abilities in each chamber, and then you can fire them off quickly. So you have to set up certain combinations for things you have to do quickly, and there's a quick reload button to make this slightly less frustrating, but you have to think about it. That's more we wanted to focus the puzzle solving and the critical thought in moment-to-moment gameplay. We didn't want players to get bogged down in dialogue puzzles.
Right. Makes a lot of sense. And there is a passion for guns in this, which is interesting, and not a passion for violence. But I just get this sense from your tone. Do you think guns are kind of neat as a mechanical device?
Well, I like the mechanics of them. I'm actually a target shooter. I sport shoot for fun. I don't kill things or people or whatever. I have a pistol. I shoot targets. It's fun.
Yeah.
Outdoor ranges because they're more fun than indoor ranges. I am a responsible shooter. Please don't get angry on me at me on Twitter because I own a firearm. For the love of God, please.
I don't think they should. You can love programming, math, art as a thing. How do these things fit together? Isn't it fun to try to do your best with these tools we've been given? That's all target firing is, from what I know. Yeah.
Pretty much, it's a thing that especially Europeans have a hard time understanding. Where you really run into problems with is people in the city often grow up without exposure to firearms, and their only exposure to firearms is hearing the dude get shot in the alley, or hearing that gunshot in the middle of the night, and they know someone just died. I completely understand why that creates, and you just don't want to be anywhere near the concept. I totally understand that. I totally understand that that's the reality for a lot of people. My experience is I actually grew up in Alaska, Anchorage specifically. It's not super rural, but the point is, firearms are just part of your life. When you go out and walk your dog, you actually take a pistol with you, depending on where you live, because there are bears. Mind you, a pistol won't actually kill a large grizzly, but it will at least scare most of them off. That's why you carry a gun with you. It's not like a mugger's going to jump out and take your dog. It's because there are bears. There's a very good reason to have a shotgun in the house. There's a very good reason to have a pistol. Or people have sometimes sling rifles over their shoulders. This is just part of life when you're living out in the boonies, basically. So I wanted to, again, the cool thing about being indie is the games you make are, they get to incorporate who you are, what your experience as a person. So one of my unique experiences compared to, again, I'm moving to Seattle, moving to a rural part of Seattle, but still I'll be downtown often because I can take ferries. Yay, ferries! So because my experience is so different from folks in larger cities that I now encounter, I kind of want to involve that experience of mine. And part of that is that guns are an interesting tool, but they're not. I don't really support killing things with them.
Right.
They're them as a mechanical device only, without the rest.
Sure.
A lot of this also I mean, I'm sure there's some dude out there going, "Oh man, that girl doesn't want to have violence because she's a girl." Maybe I do have boobs. You got me. See? Yeah, okay, I could be part of it, but part of it also could be that I grew up on, or I worked I cut my teeth with Lego Universe, which was a non-violent game because we were aiming for boys 8 to 11, kids 8 to 11. Though they actually do target boys very specifically because boys. Lego knows how to market to boys better than they know how to market to girls. So if there's a split, they tend to go to their known market. They're actually doing a lot better with this recently. The Lego Friends line was kind of bad at first and played at gender stereotypes, but the recent Lego Friends stuff has looked a lot better, so it's really cool. But just, there could have been that. Could have been the fact that the game before that even was non-violent. It was a gardening game. So a lot of it could just be that my experience as a game developer thus far hasn't involved violent games, and therefore that's how I think.
But you play violent games, from what I gather.
Yeah.
I think as I've gotten to know you in the past, geez, we only have 10 minutes left on the show, hour and 20 minutes, you don't sound like someone who's excited to tread familiar paths.
Exactly. I like challenge.
Yeah, new things, trying, seeing what happens, being optimistic, and being ready to learn from the failures. You wouldn't get that from just doing Shadow Complex 2, but you are getting that from making a game about an African-American lesbian who partners with a cat who wears a fedora, and they shoot bubble gum out of their gun as they solve mysteries and explore a 2D action platforming space.
Oh, by the way, they are shared worlds. Jones on Fire, our previous game, and this are the same character. The story is that Emma Jones got downsized from the firefighter department because of budgetary issues, and then she had to come into the city and find work. She chose work as a private investigator. Frankie is actually one of the cats that she rescued from the forest, and the shop cat, people might remember from Jones on Fire, is a character here as well. He also moved into the city.
Ah, fun! Yeah, people can play Jones on Fire right now, if I'm not mistaken. It's been out for a little bit now.
Technically, there is a PC port. So the PC port will actually be on Steam, parallel to Hot Tin Roof. It's there for historical purposes more than anything, so that you can actually play it. We're going to bundle it together as kind of a limited edition sort of thing. All pre-orders of Hot Tin Roof, if I can set it up right, I haven't talked to Valve about this. They said they could. All pre-orders of Hot Tin Roof, period, should also get Jones on Fire bundled in. And then after that, it'll be $14.99 for Hot Tin Roof and $2.99 for Jones on Fire. Point is, it exists on PC, but it probably plays a lot better on mobile since that's what it was designed for. So if you can't play it on phone, play it on phone. And it's available basically everywhere at this point. If you can't play it on phone, PC's good. Just remember that it's a mobile port, so you're going to be using a lot of up arrow and down arrow, and then you'll use the mouse to interact. Technically, you can click the screen if you really want to have the touch experience. It works really well on if you happen to have a Microsoft tablet, for instance, or if you happen to have a touch monitor that detaches. It works really well on those. But generally speaking, you'll be using the up arrow and down arrow to jump and slide. So those caveats aside, yes, it's out, and folks should play it if they want to get a sense for the writing that I do and the kind of quirky nature of my characters and the weird nature of the world, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
All right. There's a pretty cool Gamasutra post-mortem about Jones on Fire, which I linked to on the Destructoid post, where if you're just listening to this, you might want to look that up and look up Megan's other post-mortems. I'll do this question first, and then if we have time, I will ask about the indie bubble, because it's something that comes up a lot, and you wrote something pretty interesting about it, I think, the indie bubble. But we may not have time for that because, geez, it's been a great episode. Just flows right in. Things are said, and then before you know it, it's almost over. Can't believe how fast it goes sometimes. Super Kitty Pogo Dance asks, when working on a game, do you ever find that ideas for other games or new ideas for the current game invade your thoughts? And how do you work around this? Yes, feature creep is something that is often the result of that, having just new ideas, and of course...
Right, this one quickly. Yes, I do. The way I get around them is, first of all, spending probably more time than I really should planning the next game. UNormal person, his name is actually Brian Buckley, but UNormal is his Twitter handle. And I are going to combine forces. By the way, he's the developer of Sproggywood. Sproggywood is a really cool, cute roguelike. You should give it a go. I think it's actually currently on sale. Yeah, give it a go. It's pretty cool.
On Steam, right? Yes.
So that's his game. Our next game is actually going to be collaboration. It's also going to have lots of violence in it. I want to try a violent game because I've never done it before. It doesn't work with my world for Hot Tin Roof because it's Another weird thing about the game is it has this huge kid following. Like, I get a ton of feedback from parents that say their kids love Jones on Fire, and we actually do well with kids at trade shows too. It's very all ages, so I had to tread a really careful line of, yeah, the dialogue's pretty adult, but that's another reason I avoided the shooting. Because I had a lot of kid fans, and then I make a game where boxing people explode into blood and guts. That doesn't really fit the audience, and that's part of that. Once a game is released, you embrace what people say the game is as opposed to what the game could be as far as you're concerned. Trying to respect the audience you attracted and so on. It's an all-ages game as opposed to an adult game. So, Mario as opposed to Nathan Drake.
Right.
Anyways, yes, the way I get around those ideas, aside from planning things, is I have a giant folder of game ideas. Every time I have an idea for a game, it doesn't get out of my head until I write it down. Once I do write it down, it tends to go away. And then over time, those documents might grow a bit as I flesh the ideas out. Our next game will incorporate a lot of those ideas. So yeah, that's how I do it. Answer.
Get them out, put them down, check them out later,
Yep.
but don't get caught up in trying to integrate them and knowing that hopefully you have somewhat of a life ahead of you and you'll get to it later. In the meantime, you got to finish what you're doing. Makes a lot of sense. So the indie bubble, I wonder about the whole concept of indie and how so many of us who are passionate about video games enough to even know what indie video game means, we exist in something of an echo chamber, whether we want to or not, because the only people who are talking to us about indie games are other people who care about it. I try to talk to people outside of that, and the conversation lasts for all of 30 seconds before the subject is changed. So it can't happen. But games like yours, games like Thomas Was Alone, which we talked about briefly, these are games that I see appealing to people who don't even know what an indie video game is. They don't think about where did this game come from. Was this maybe a big company, a little company? They want to play a game that involves them, speaks to themes while giving them problems to solve, is appealing, lighthearted, sweet, fun. So many people I know, Thomas Was Alone, again, they looked at it and thought, oh, it's a artsy-fartsy, blah, blah, blah. But then you just show it to your average person, and they're like, no, this is just a fun video game that makes me laugh and makes me happy. Maybe this indie bubble people are worried about, maybe it's about appealing to other people outside of who even knows what indie is to avoid trying to feed food to the people who are already fed on more indie games than they know what to do with. I don't know. This is a thought I had.
So, what you're talking about is reaching beyond enthusiast press into national press. The basic problem with that is it's effectively impossible for niche markets unless you're paying for marketing or unless you get lucky. And getting lucky involves generally reaching a sales threshold at which point enough people are talking about it that the staff writer at the Tribune or whatever can get away with writing a story on the game, because when they pitch to their editor doesn't go, what the fuck is that? So reaching beyond the core market is effectively impossible for small developers, intentionally.
Right.
Unless you have a marketing budget, in which case you're probably not a small developer anymore. The indie bubble concept comes from the idea that, for instance, let's talk about Thomas Was Alone, since Mike, hi Mike, you're awesome. Mike Bithell, please follow him on Twitter. He has like 14 million followers, but he's a really sweet guy. Game Design Dan wrote, no, not Dan Rosenthal. Just Game Design Dan is his Twitter follower. He's another of the BAFTA people. There's a bunch of cool people. They're all worth following. He, by the way, made, I believe it's 10-Second Ninja, which is another of these that we can talk about. There for a while, Steam was curating. By curating, that meant that they could lift certain obscure games out based purely on the relevance or the interest or whatever of the inherent game, as opposed to its sales performance. The indie bubble concept comes from the idea that since Valve is no longer curating and since other curation options are out, for instance, mobile, please don't make a mobile game. I mean, make a mobile game as if you're a student and you're moonlighting and you're learning, or you're someone that can afford to effectively gamble. For the love of God, don't burn your savings making a mobile game thinking, I'll make $1 million. You will not make $1 million. You will not make $1, potentially. Just drop that idea. That is a speculative market now. You can speculate in that market, and it's pretty good if you get lucky, but don't think of it like you do it unless you have a lot of money. It currently costs upwards of $200,000 to effectively launch a free-to-play game. Free-to-play games have huge budgets because of this. User acquisition costs are what I'm talking about here. Free-to-play games are successful whenever you balance profit per user against user acquisition costs. And right now, because as user acquisition costs go up, polish requirements go up to increase the value per player, they also start tuning the equation to make it more hateful and abusive of the players. They squeeze more money out. Because of these two things rising, both the polish requirements and the cost per user are so high that indies can no longer compete in this space unless you are someone already installed in that space that has an installed audience or an ear with Apple to guarantee featuring. If you don't have these things, you cannot effectively compete in the space without effectively getting lucky. And that doesn't say you can't get lucky, just keep that in mind and treat it as, like I said, speculation as opposed to business decision. Anyways, that avenue closed, Steam curation closed. Consoles are actually, in a lot of ways, opening up, but they're harder to talk about, so let's focus on PC and mobile right now. A lot of the avenues for curation are closed. Because of that, the idea is that the indie bubble kind of popped, and now there are too many people on the stage, and there's not enough curation, and therefore no one can rise above the noise to get out. The reason the indie bubble butts, which I made because I like butt puns, I'm a terrible person. The point of that article is that this concept of an indie bubble is kind of a lie to begin with. Nothing is popped. There were already failures before the green light flood happened. There were already failures before Apple closed effectively closed the doors on getting noticed. And it wasn't really that much just the flood of the market that closed. But anyways, there were already failures. They just don't get promoted. No one hears about them. Like you said, it's an echo chamber. We don't talk about the successes. So it's not that it's impossible to get noticed. You do have to think about marketing. You really do have to think about getting your game out there. If you're not on Twitter, you should have been on Twitter 2 years ago, and I'm sorry, and you're going to have to work hard to make a community now. But you need to figure out some way to make a community. You need to figure out some way of getting your game noticed. You need to figure out some way of getting on shows like this. I guess I don't know.
Maybe.
Pick your avenue. You need to figure that. You need to think about it. This myth that you got on Steam and then your game was a success, that's always been a myth. In the Indie Bubble Bot article, I point out a bunch of games that had miserable failures on Steam. And this was multiple years ago, before Greenlight was even a glitter in the eyes of the developers. It just didn't exist, and it was already a closed market. And there were still failures. And that was because this was a myth to begin with. Good games, marketed and given visibility properly, can still succeed. The success margins, the degree to which you can go, that's kind of shrinking a little bit. Making multiple millions of dollars as a first-time indie is probably now harder because of the difficulty of getting noticed. But in terms of basic success, no, you can still do it so long as you think about marketing, so long as you think about visibility. If you don't, then that's where the indie bubble has burst. Oh my God, all of our games, we can't do this anymore. And you most often see that article, that type of article, that postmortem. It's most commonly a postmortem for a failed game in which they assert that the bubble has burst and that indie is no longer profitable. Almost universally, these are games that had no communities, that didn't market themselves very well, that did not have a marketing budget, that did not dedicate any of their meager profits towards marketing, that they made some mistake along the way. And rather than embracing that mistake and seeing what you can learn from this and moving on to the next one, they take these the stance that the indie bubble has burst, and that so on. The reason they often take this stance is because they blew all of their savings on their first game. They thought they were going to be a big success out of the gate. You can't assume that. You have to be in this for the long haul. Your first game will almost certainly be a failure, and you have to embrace that. Jones on Fire, critical success, financial, huge failure. Because I've survived so long, and now to get on Steam, the level to which it needs to succeed, we're talking like it needs to make $10,000 more and it's profitable. That will probably happen on Steam, which is really cool. But you don't get those chances unless you actually budget for the long haul. And that's also where the community building thing comes in. You can't probably create a large community before your first game as a nobody. You need to have a game out there. And it might have failed. It might have had some meager success. Maybe it was good, so you got critical following. And then over time, you build a community. And that's the process of marketing. But if you don't think about that, if you don't think about community building, yes, you will not find success. That's always been the case in the indie bubble that people say burst recently. No. It has always been hard. We just have survivorship bias in our market, and we focus on the successes and we don't pay attention to the failures. And the end result is it feels like a bubble burst when, no, I don't know.
It does. It is catchy. Like when you say a bubble burst, you're like, really? You want to listen to that? But the reality is, having that pessimistic attitude, which you just kind of described, and we've talked about it off and on throughout the episode, of, well, there's no way to succeed as an indie anymore, so I give up. It's not my fault. You're not going to learn anything from that. To try to take the data and look at it rationally and then apply optimism to how you use that data to move forward, well, that's what you're doing. It seems to work pretty well. Here you are.
Potentially. Again, my success is alleged until I actually have a successful game. But I am still here, and the reason I'm still here is because I reduced my burn rate to almost nothing. I live with my partner, and I do my best to keep expenses low and keep expectations low. And if I ever have a large success, then everyone will forget that part and say, "Oh, Megan Fox, out of nowhere, comes with a huge hit hot tin roof. Wow, how did she do it?" And I'll be just groaning and
knowing the full story, yeah. And I hope that, you make a strong point. I certainly can't argue with it, that getting that crossover success in the mainstream is not, as we've known it thus far, an easy road. But I hope it keeps getting easier. I know a lot of people who don't normally think of themselves as a gamer and have bought into that kind of marketing technique to convince people to kind of create an identity around whether they play video games and be proud of it or not. People that just are like, I grew up with video games. It's just a part. It's like movies, books, whatever. They're playing games like Thomas Was Alone. They're playing games that are something that would have thought to be just for an enthusiast before, but they're just kind of normal, fun things to like. You don't have to be a video game enthusiast to enjoy them. I'm hoping that there's more and more crossover of that as time goes on.
One of those avenues right now is, for instance, Thomas Was Alone was a PlayStation Plus freebie one month. There's also the Xbox Live Games with Gold program. Both of those are programs that you have to be enrolled in as an online gamer anyways. So your dude or your dudette.
Which is on the spectrum. Well, you've got your people who are like living and breathing games, and then you're moving more towards console gamers who will play Smash Brothers and Call of Duty, and then you have people that are pretty much only on the phone. Then you have people that play Minesweeper, and that's pretty much it. You're moving towards that.
Exactly. I mean, on Xbox, for instance, you have to have gold to even use Netflix. So all these people are just buying a console and using them as Netflix boxes. They have gold. So these same people are now getting free games, and of course a percentage of them are going to play it because it's a free game. So when you get Thomas Was Alone this way, whenever you get Dishwasher this way, whenever you get Vampire Smile this way, that is a way of bridging into that new market. Steam has similar programs. If you get lucky and get a Steam featuring as a small developer, a lot more people than play indie games are paying attention to that front page. So there are Apple feature. If you get an Apple feature, no look out. The avenues exist to bridge into mainstream. They tend to be luck-based, or they tend to be things you can only get into after you've been in the industry for a few years. But if you keep playing the odds, you'll probably eventually get one. I mean, you just have to survive long enough until that actually happens. And the second that happens, everyone forgets Mike Bithell. Sorry, Mike, I keep going back to you. He has been in the industry for a very long time. Has a very long stretch of games. But no one remembers that. They remember Thomas Was Alone. It doesn't exist. No.
Yeah, now he's got freaking Andy Serkis in his. I still can't get over that. My old Destructoid colleague Jim Sterling is playing Friar Tuck in his next game, Volume. Can't believe that. And that's Mac. He was on the show around when Thomas Was Alone first came out, before he was like a celebrity in video game development. Maybe he'll still come back though. That would be nice to have him on the show again. And we're out of time. Unfortunately, we're a little over time, about 10 minutes. But it was all worth it. I hope I didn't keep you from anything that you had to do. Thank you for staying late with us. Megan Fox, you can be followed on Twitter at
GlassBottomMeg. GlassBottommeg.
That's right. And Glassbottom Games has its own .com you can check out. Yep. And, geez, very exciting. Think about Hot Tin Roof coming out so soon. I've been following the development for a while, and it was a Kickstarter success as well. Darn it, I wish we had talked about how to succeed at Kickstarter. Maybe next time.
There's been enough of those articles. Just Google Kickstarter. Specifically, if you want to Google Kickstarter in this 3 seconds, look for Shovel Knight. They did a really good post-mortem. They are by far one of the best write-ups. Start there, branch out.
Another former Sep Holmes, Sean Velasco, has been on the show twice. One of the few people to be on 2 times. What a neat guy he is. I've done the special thanks to Shovel Knight Good thing I didn't review it. People would have been mad at me. I'm at TronNuts on Twitter. You can watch the show later on YouTube, youtube.com/SupHolmesShow. You can also listen to it on iTunes and Libsyn. I advise just Googling that because finding those URLs is kind of a pain in the neck. But Google will help you. Geez, I think we're on like episode 125 or so, which is pretty bonkers. 75 episodes left in the Kickstarter campaign, which was for 100 episodes. Hopefully we'll keep going even after that. We'll see. We got a year and a half to find out, I suppose. All right, I guess that's it. Thanks, everybody. Take care. Thank you, Megan.
See ya.